So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker. John Gee received an MA from the University of California at Berkeley and a PhD from Yale University. He is the Bill Gay Associate Research Professor of Egyptology at the Neal A. Maxwell Institute for Religious Scholarship at Brigham Young University. I forgot to tell you, John, I was in Bill Gay's ward for a while, so he's a very nice man. He's very good. He's the author of more than 80 publications dealing with Mormon subjects, Egyptology, and the ancient Near East. His writings have been published by publishers such as American University of Cairo Press, E. J. Brill Foundation, and I can't read it because it's in French, I think, or I'm not sure. Egyptologique Rhine Elizabeth, anyway. Harrisowitz Verlag, Peters, the Cardston Neubauer Institute for Near Eastern Studies, another one I can't read, and I'm skipping down these other ones I can't read, a number of other publishers. His work has appeared in journals and series like the Bulletin de Mus Hongrie de... I should have gone on a French-speaking mission, I can tell. So here's one I can read. The Goettinger, I went German-speaking mission, that's good. Magellan Journal of the American Research Center in Egypt and the Journal for the Society for the Study of Egypt Antiquities. Orientella, another one I can't read. And a few more, just he went to a lot. Of course, he's been in the Journal Book of Mormon Studies, the Farms Review. His work has been vetted by numerous Egyptologists, including James Allen, Jane Osman, Burkhard Beckes, Levant Bavet, Jean Bijan, Michel Broz, Christine Cardin, Michel Chavot, Eugene, and a whole bunch more. Forgive me, John, because there's a long list of Egyptologists and other people who've vetted his work. He is on the board of trustees for the study of Egyptian antiquities. He's given Egyptological presentations at conferences at Atlanta, Brown University, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Hawaii, Jersey City, Johns Hopkins University, San Antonio, Tucson, University of California, Berkeley, University of Kansas, Washington, D.C., Yale University, Budapest, Cairo, Grenoble, Institut Catholique de Paris, the Rheinische Friedrich Wilhelms Universität Bonn, the Royal Ontario Museum, the Université Libre de Brussels, University of Copenhagen, and the University of Toronto. With that, with a partial introduction, I will introduce John Gee.
It is an honor to follow the ever-eloquent Terrell Givens. Terrell has discussed the Western views of the pre-existence. Although the concept of the pre-existence is alluded to in various places in Latter-day Saint scriptures, the clearest discussion comes from the Book of Abraham. And it is almost the only reason that Latter-day Saints use the Book of Abraham. Of the 378 quotations of the Book of Abraham in General Conference since 1942, 238 or 63% come from the section on the pre-existence in Abraham 3:18 through 28. The next most commonly cited passage is the section on the Abrahamic covenant in Abraham 2:6 through 11, which is cited 42 times for 11% of the citations. The situation is mirrored in the church's Sunday curriculum materials, where the Book of Abraham is cited 206 times. Again, the section on the pre-existence is the most commonly cited, and the Abrahamic covenant is second. Whatever else the Book of Abraham says is of comparatively minor importance to Latter-day Saints. My topic, therefore, is irrelevant to the doctrine of Christ. It is a mere mote in our eyes, but a beam in the eyes of the critics. Now, some of you here are so intimately acquainted with the discussions about the Book of Abraham and the Joseph Smith Papyri that you are inseparably wedded to them. Some of you are somewhat acquainted with the arguments, but perhaps not yet on a first-name basis. Others of you are vaguely aware that some discussion exists, but have not yet been introduced to it. I hope I will have something for all of you. For those of you who are new, allow me to introduce you to what I have affectionately referred to as the mess of the Joseph Smith Papyri. The fullest discussion of the origins of the Joseph Smith Papyri in the church's Sunday curriculum is in the Gospel Doctrine Manual for the Old Testament. It says, quote, "The Book of Abraham is a translation that the Prophet Joseph Smith made from some Egyptian papyri. That is it. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has no official position on how the Book of Abraham was translated or from what papyrus. Now, just because the church has no official position does not mean that individual members do not have some opinions on the subject. Church members tend to divide into four opinions about the translation of the Book of Abraham. The smallest group, comprising about 0.5% of Mormons, according to my informal, admittedly unscientific surveys, think that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Abraham from the existing fragments that were in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The next largest group think that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Abraham from papyrus fragments that are no longer in existence. About 1/3 of Mormons think that there is or was no connection between the Book of Abraham and any papyrus fragments. The largest group, more than half of Mormons, do not care where the Book of Abraham came from. Critics routinely assert that the Mormon position is the one that is actually the least popular of all Mormon positions. They want it to be the Mormon position because it is the most convenient straw man. The only eyewitness to the translation process to describe it was Joseph Smith's scribe Warren Parrish, who after he left the church claimed, quote, "I have sat by his side and pinned down the translation of the Egyptian hieroglyphics as he claimed to receive it by direct inspiration of heaven." The majority of church members are probably comfortable leaving the discussion of the translation of the Book of Abraham at that, and on this occasion I will leave it at that too, except to say that so far no theory about the translation of the papyri accounts for all the evidence. Today, however, I would like to take a look at the papyri themselves and some of the puzzles surrounding them, namely, what papyri did Joseph Smith have? And what do we know about the ancient owners of the papyri? And we may not be able to cover all of this here, and certainly can't cover all of the possible topics on either the papyri or the Book of Abraham. I'm not even going to try. Now, the saga of the Joseph Smith papyri begins in the early part of the 19th century during the pillaging of Egypt that at that time passed for archaeology. One of those involved in the plunder and pillage of Egypt was Antonio Labello. He exhumed one of the most spectacular caches of mummy and papyri from Thebes that Egyptology has ever known. I used to think that the accounts of several hundred mummies were vastly exaggerated. I am no longer so sure. Labello was acting as an agent procuring antiquities for Bernardino Drovetti, but kept a few for himself. These were sent via Albano Oblasar to America, paraded around the country, and sold off piecemeal until the remainder were sold by Michael Chandler to the church in July of 1835. The church got 4 mummies and at least 5 papyri. After Joseph Smith's mother's death in 1856, the papyri were sold to Abel Coombs, who sold part of the collection to a museum in St. Louis, which eventually moved to Chicago and burned to the ground in the Chicago fire of 1871. And he kept part of the collection for himself. Coombs's collection passed through various hands until it was acquired by the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 1947. The Metropolitan Museum of Art knew that they had acquired, quote, papyrus fragments of hieratic books of the dead, once the property of the Mormon leader Joseph Smith. The Metropolitan Museum was fully aware of what the papyri were when they first saw them in 1918, and they knew what they were doing when they acquired them. Klaus Baer recalled, "I saw photographs of them for the first time in 1963, I believe, and was asked at that time, on my honor, not to tell anyone where they were and to keep the whole thing confidential." The guard had changed at the museum, and the new curators were not as keen to have the papyri as the previous curators had been. Henry Fisher, curator of the Department of Egyptian Art at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the late 1960s, explained how the museum decided to deal with their religious hot potato. "We knew, since Aziz Atiya worked in Salt Lake City and was acquainted with leaders of the Mormon Church, that he might very tactfully find out how they felt about it. So we simply informed him about this in confidence, and I think he handled the matter very nicely. The newspapers garbled the story by wrongly making Atiyah the discoverer of the documents, which disturbed Fisher. He wrote to Atiyah as follows: "Although